Hey everybody, this is Mike Hambright. I'm a development agent with HomeVestors of America. Want to teach you a little bit about exit strategies today. This is going to be an overview, and we're going to talk about the most common exit strategies, and those are assigning the rights to a contract to properties, wholesaling, selling on the retail market, and rental properties. And hopefully you get a chance to learn something here so that you can make some money. So first, I want to give you a quick overview of how I think about our business model. Hopefully I don't overly complicate this, but real estate is no different than any other product. There's a supply chain, okay? You could buy the raw materials, you can buy the land and build it up to something that you sell to a customer, or you can play varying roles within that model, or maybe you just play one role. So if you think of any product, let's just say make it up a chair, you can buy the raw materials, and then somebody may sell those raw materials to a factory that manufactures them, that may sell that to a distributor that then sells that to a retailer, that then sells that to a consumer. So if you think of real estate with that same model, you'll understand that you can play multiple roles, you can play all the roles, you may just play one role, but what you have to keep in mind is if there's nothing there, it's worth zero essentially. Once you've got it full, all the value added, and it's fully completed product, it'll hopefully be worth full market value. And so as you're selling it up the supply chain, if you will, you need to have enough meat on the bones for the next guy because he has to sell it and be able to make a profit. Everybody has to make a profit here. If they don't, it's not a sustainable business model. So first let's talk about assigning properties. Okay, what this means is essentially you have a house under contract to buy, but your contract clearly states that you have the legal right to assign those rights to allow somebody else to close in your place. Presumably that other person's price was marked up from the price that you would agree to pay for the house, so you can make a difference. You can make the difference. You would basically make the spread on that. So let's talk about an example here. Okay, you have agreed to purchase a house from Sally, and so you have a contract to purchase the house, and in exchange for, let's just say $1 to keep the example simple. Now your contract, this is the part that's important, states that you can assign the rights of the contract to someone else. And Sally generally won't care. She just wants to sell the house for $1, which is what you'd agreed to. She doesn't care if it's you or somebody else. Okay, so you run into your friend Tom the next day, who you know likes to buy investment properties, and he happens to be looking for some right now. You talk to him a little bit about the house, and he said, hey, I'm willing to pay you $2 for that same house. Okay, so on closing day, Tom actually buys the house from Sally. So Sally gets the dollar that she had agreed to sell the house for, as planned, but it's actually Tom that sells the house. Okay, so Tom gives Sally the dollar she's expecting, and wait a minute, Tom said he would pay $2 for the house. So, okay, so you get the other dollar, all right, for your troubles, for making this market, for making this deal happen. And folks, this is a very common way to transact in residential real estate investing. And even before I was in this business, I had no idea that this type of thing happened. And essentially, if you're in this business, you'll see that this is very, very common. Okay, next we're going to talk about wholesaling. And wholesaling is essentially, you end up with the same result. It's very similar, but you're not assigning the rights. You actually have to buy the house from Sally yourself and then turn around and sell it to Tom. So that could be a minute later. It could be a year later. There's no limit on it. I mean, generally it's a short amount of time, within a day or within a few days. But let's talk about the key differences here. Okay, the first one is you had to buy the house, which so that means you needed to have capital to buy the house, which means you probably have some expenses associated with borrowing that money for a short period of time, or using that money, or if it's your own money, the opportunity cost of what else you could have done with that money. Okay, the second key difference here is that there were 2 closings, not one. And the end result is the same, but there was just a little more work involved and some additional costs because there were 2 closings. So to keep this example simple, I don't want to get into the details of who may or may not have paid for those closing costs. But the point of the matter is, somewhere between you and Tom and Sally, there were 2 closing costs that somebody had to pay for. So a little more complex, but the end result is really the same thing. Tom has the house, you presumably made some money, and Sally got her dollar that she was promised initially. Okay, now let's talk about when you buy a house, rehab it, and then sell it on the retail market. And this is a little more straightforward, probably more intuitive for the average person, depending on your level of experience. So let's just use the same house even. You agree to buy the house from Sally for $1. Okay, so you then close on that house, and you invest some more money into making improvements in the house, and of course your time. And then you actually sell the property at some point, hopefully as soon as possible to minimize your costs. But you sell it to generally an owner-occupant. Most investors are not going to buy a house from you that's been rehabbed because you've created value there that there may not be any additional profit opportunity for them. So we'll call this guy George, but he bought the house. He's probably an owner-occupant rather than an investor. And everybody's looking a little thin here these days. So let's talk real fast about rentals. This is just a quick overview of rentals. I don't want to get into, we could talk all day long about rentals, but essentially with a rental, what you're doing is you may buy that same house from Sally and make some investment to it possibly, but turn it into a rental, and essentially you're foregoing any sort of profit today. In fact, you're going to have more expenses likely because you're going to probably have to make some investment into it, and you're going to hold it for a little while until you get it rented and things of that nature. But you're foregoing the short-term profit on it in exchange for the benefits of owning a rental property, which are generally some monthly cash flow, some long-term appreciation, and there are a lot of great benefits from owning rental properties. Of course, you could also end up with some potential headaches. So generally speaking, rentals are they are or can be painful, but the challenge there really is scale. If you have 1 or 2 rental properties, they're generally a lot more painful than if you have 50. So that's enough for rentals right now. Let's talk real fast about the pros and cons of each of these strategies. So one of the biggest pros of an assignment is that you don't own the property. Now, what that means is what I'm alluding to here is you don't have to have the capital to buy and sell this properties like this with assignments. And so, but also one of the cons is that you don't, and I put it in quotes there, own the property. When you don't own the property, you have to rely on others to perform and things. So some things could go wrong, and you have less control, generally speaking. But with assignments, another pro, some of the other pros here, there's very little risk. Like I said, not a lot of capital needed, if any, other than for operating your business. The deals tend to be very fast when you assign a property to somebody. The title company or law office usually wires your money to your account the same day, or you could get a check. And there's very few people involved. As you'll see, that's different with retailing here, which we'll talk about in a second. So one of the other cons that I mentioned here is you may be leaving money on the table. Again, you're probably selling it to another investor that's going to extract some value from it above and beyond what you did. Of course, it's worth their while. They're in this to make money. So you could be leaving money on the table by not taking it further to the end of that supply chain that we talked about up front, taking it all the way to the consumer. So wholesaling, again, was very similar to assigning, but generally you're going to control the property because you own it. It's, again, fast cash. It's faster than rehabbing. Generally not quite as fast as assigning unless it's what we call a double close, which would basically be a wholesale deal that you maybe close instantaneously, both closings. And it's a little appealing to sell to the next guy. Some of the cons are that, again, that you have to own the property, so there's more risk. Unless it's a simultaneous close, you're going to have some expenses in there for utilities and taxes and holding costs, and things start to add up. Even if you own it for just a few days, it could be that the day after you own it, somebody breaks in and steals the appliances, or you never know. Things can go wrong, and over time they will, but generally speaking, it is a pretty straightforward exit strategy. Okay, rehabbing. So first thing you probably note here is the list of cons is longer than the list of pros, and I actually rehab quite a few properties myself. probably 60 to 70% of the properties I buy I rehab. So I guess what I can say here is the size of the list doesn't matter necessarily. It's the importance of each of these points. So let's talk about the cons first. Okay, it's a lot of work to rehab houses. A lot more work certainly than assigning them. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. This is obviously a difficult market that we're going through now, and has been for several years, will be for several years. And even in good markets, the markets change. So it's possible that you buy the house anticipating to sell it for price X, and price X is less than what you're able to get for it by the time you rehab it and put it back on the market. The market has changed. Now it could go the other way as well. It could go up, so it could be a good thing. Of course, you have lots of holding costs, and probably the most challenging part is there just are lots of people involved. Aside from all your your contractors and folks that you have to deal with, which can be painful, you have multiple lenders, people that are lending to you to rehab the house, to buy and purchase and rehab the house, and the lender for the person that you ultimately sell the property to, which is going to require appraisers and inspections, city permit offices that have to come in and make sure that you're doing the work properly, and real estate agents. And this actually, I've shortened this list up. I mean, there are a ton of different people that are involved while you're rehabbing a house, that unless you have a system that you follow, unless you do this in a way that makes it very simple for you, it can be a challenge. Okay. Now the pros, and what I love most about rehabbing, is I really enjoy the transformation. We buy some houses that are in just terrible condition, burnouts, major foundation issues, water damage, lots of things, and I love to tear them down, and not literally tear them down all the way, but just kind of break them down and build them back up, and just turn these things into, you know, the nicest house on the street in a very short amount of time. And for me, rehabbing has tended to be very profitable. So they're not always your most profitable deals. You actually are able to make some good money on assignments periodically, but generally speaking, rehabbing is thought to be a little bit more profitable than the other exit strategies. So you're probably asking, what is the right exit strategy? Well, it depends. That's going to be my answer to a lot of questions that we talk about over time. But it depends on a lot of things. Your risk tolerance, what are your goals? Do you have access to capital? Are you able? Do you have unlimited capital where you can just rehab everything? Do you have no capital where you can't rehab anything? You have to assign everything. And you know, your bandwidth, you know, as an extreme measure, you probably can't rehab 10 houses a month. Can you do one a month? Can you do one every other month? Can you do two a year? You know, what time of year is it? In some parts of the country, the Northeast and the upper Midwest, you're probably not going to be doing a major rehab, at least on the outside, during the winter time. And even the real estate market slows down significantly. A lot of folks don't move when there's several feet of snow on the ground in some markets. So it depends very heavily on your kind of risk tolerance here. And you know, I'll say there's no right solution for every deal. The best business models, in my experience, are those that use every exit strategy at one point or another. So you need to invest in real estate in a way that makes sense for you. This is Mike Hambright. We buy ugly houses, and you can too. Please visit us at uglyopportunities.com to learn more about our incredible new business opportunity. It's a great opportunity, and I hope you'll check us out some more. Thanks.